Good morning. This is Pastor Rick, and I want to welcome you to the Sunday Forum on July the 12th. I'm really pleased to be here with Pastor Will again, and we want to talk this morning about the newest in our educational series here at Emmanuel, Work Matters with Pastor Will. Now, we're going to get to that educational series in just a moment, but first, Will, I heard that you made a very important announcement 2 weeks ago out at the park during the service. It was an important announcement about our Hope For Pavilion, and I bet a lot of our people here have not heard that announcement yet. So what's the good news?
Oh, it's so exciting, Pastor Rick. If you haven't heard, we've had some gracious donors step forward, very generous, to give the amount that we need to construct the pavilion. And one of these three forms right
So we have
here.
three possibilities.
We do. It's exciting.
So could you briefly describe what we're seeing with these pictures and these possibilities for the future pavilion out at the park?
Sure, absolutely. Our first one here on the very right is a hut, a tiki hut, for lack of a better term. The interesting thing, though, is it's built by the Seminole Miccosukee tribe, which is actually two different tribes, but they work together in tandem. What's interesting about this structure here is that only members of the tribe build these structures.
So they'd have to participate on the construction of this.
Absolutely. It's a part of the state law, and so it would be a great way for us to establish a relationship with those tribes because we are the closest Lutheran congregation to them out there.
All right.
Our second structure is a steel structure with a metal roof. Now, all of these structures will have the same dimensions, about 60 feet by 40 feet, so about 2,400 square feet.
Okay, translate that for us. I mean, how many people, without social distancing, how many people could you fit into the structure like this?
Well, in each of these three structures, pre-COVID, without the social distancing, we could fit about 200 people in.
Okay, 200 people. So that's a nice worship service. It's a nice picnic, a night together.
Absolutely. There's plenty of room for everyone. The final model we have here is a very intricate wood model with a metal roof and some brick siding around the bases of each. And as I said before, the pictures, they look small, the pavilion, but they will actually be larger in surface area and in space. So these are three excellent choices that we have to choose from.
So my guess is some committees are going to get together, certainly the church council, and everybody's going to put in their input about which one we should select. When do you think you'll actually have your first worship service under one of these three pavilions?
Well, you're absolutely right, Pastor Rick. We're good Lutherans, so we have to form our committees and subcommittees. And
God so loved the world.
That's it.
That he sent a committee.
And have our discussion. And we'll be working with, of course, our 501c3 Emmanuel communities. But I foresee what I really like to see is us worshiping under the pavilion fall time. Okay. But more than anything, our Christmas Eve service under the pavilion would just be a beautiful and moving thing.
So maybe the fall, but definitely Christmas Eve under the pavilion, out at the park. We're all going to be there.
Oh, that would be great.
All right, let's go back to our theme today, which is this new educational series that you're leading. But I want to explore some of the motivations behind the series for you, because, you know, before you went to seminary, you were working in restaurants. And from what I gather, loving working in restaurants. Tell us about that story about your relationship to work before seminary.
Oh, it's quite a story. I'll give you the Reader's Digest version. I love to work. I have always loved to work, and I found my passion in serving others in the hospitality business. So I started early, actually too early. I was 13. My mom had a side job waiting tables, and so she would bring me along to wash dishes for a few hours with her. And so that was my first taste. As I got into high school, I started serving tables. And by the time I was 18, had taught myself how to bartend at this restaurant up here, which it wasn't called that when I was there. But by my early 20s, I was running that restaurant.
Now, you worked in each of these places?
I worked in each of these places. Some of them now look different than they did when I was first there 10 years ago. But this final place here was the last place that I came from up in Venice, made in Italy. And that one has a special place in my heart because like I'm doing now as a mission developer, I started that place with the two owners from scratch. And out of the 40 people that came in to work as a server, I was the only one they hired. So it's a very special relationship.
Now, when you and Jackie went back for your anniversary to Venice, did you eat at one of these restaurants?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
Okay.
We definitely ate at Made in Italy. And then we ate at their new restaurant up in Sarasota called Napoli. It's a beautiful restaurant.
So you had a very positive relationship with work. Then you come back to church, you go to seminary, you feel a call to ministry. When you became sort of fascinated with these two topics, and I wondered, did you see these two topics of faith and work dating, flirting together, or getting married? How would you describe that relationship?
So I would say, like any relationship that I've been involved in, I really didn't know what was going on until almost when it got to be towards the end. But so for me, as some know, there was this large gap in my 20s when I wasn't involved in church, working really hard. It was a combination of not wanting to be there, but also busy because of work. But when I did finally go back to my home congregation, that's when I began to see the threads of faith in my work life. And
so this was more about just work, although you started coming back to church as working. But then I think you have another slide about this connection. Mm-hmm. And you said, when did you start doing that? When will you start making those connections?
I would say when I first started going back to church, just attending as a layperson. And so I would pick up things in the liturgy because I had been raised in it. And also, of course, points in pastor's sermon that I was beginning to connect right away to my work life, my everyday work life. And more than anything, Pastor Rick, the rhythms of the church are what really drove me into the vocation.
Can you give an example of that?
Sure. Practicing a contemplative prayer life, especially for me in the mornings. I like to get up extra early when I had that pre-baby time and pre-spouse time and center myself. Having a consistent prayer life, praying in the morning and in the evening, praying over meals. And then especially when I got into seminary and we had Elisha, my daughter, taking this position that Luther talks about of head of the household and teaching your faith to others, starting with that small sphere of your family and slowly working out into the neighborhood. That's what really began for me connecting this idea of faith and work together.
That's a long history of the Lutheran Church of talking about, for example, connecting faith and work at home, the vocation of the family. But you've been doing that with several of the speakers we've had here at Emmanuel, and you take a brief snippet out of some of those lectures that maybe many of you attended in the spring, and you kind of make comment on it. So we want to now give you an example of one of these series of Work Matters with Pastor Will, and this is one of the latest where we had Bishop Wayne Miller, who talked about his model of how to connect faith and work. This is a 8-minute clip, about 4 minutes of Bishop Miller, and then Pastor Will's commentary. Let's watch it together. But before we let you go, and again, I hope you can join us tomorrow, but speak to one of either two things.
Yeah.
What if I'm sitting here, I go, well, I'm retired. None of this applies to me.
Me too.
So how do you apply this to yourself now, having just gone through that? Either that one, or I was taught the economy is driven by me following my own self-interest.
Right.
right? And if I follow my own self-interest, somehow that all gets worked out in the wash.
Right. So it's probably reassure some of you, I am a capitalist. I believe in capitalism. And the self-interest piece is a huge part of it. But I think that for me, to work at its best, I think it requires us to work in short-term and long-term frames. So what is if I'm hungry and I'm going to be hungry for the next 2 weeks, and I've got 12 sandwiches in the refrigerator, right? My self-interest on one level is to eat until I'm full. My self-interest in the long term is eat one sandwich every day and you'll be better at the end of 2 weeks, right? So it does require, I think, to make this work, I also think that it requires seeing self-interest. This may be controversial, and we may need to talk more about this. I think it also requires us to be able to step up and to break through the illusion of self-sufficiency. No one is self-sufficient. No one. Some people are more independent. Some people are more autonomous. Some people have the luxury of being able to make more choices between this and that for their life, all of that. But there's no one, if you're working in an economy, there's no one who is truly self-sufficient. I mean, when I was a buyer for National Can, you better believe that even though I was competing and transacting with my suppliers, I needed them. And I protected my suppliers from the people on my team because it was our self-interest to pay attention to their self-interest. So I do think that that's part of it. And then just briefly on the question of retirement, I think that the other thing that, I mentioned this in passing, but I think it's really important to emphasize it. Vocation is not just in the realm of commerce. Vocation happens in multiple arenas simultaneously. I have a vocation now, since I have left my vocation as a synod bishop, I have been drawn much more deeply into my vocation as a husband and a father. Not that I wasn't before, but I've got focus now. My vocation as a son. My mother is 95 years old. She lives in a nursing home. I spend a lot of time with my mom now that I didn't have time to spend with her when I was working. As a bishop particularly, I was all over the place. So there are constantly through our lives, our vocation is not one thing. Vocation is a function of time and timing as much as anything else. And I think that to honor that, to listen to it, to make sure that, and part of the way we listen to it is in community. When we have conversations in community, you hear yourself say things and you hear other people say things and say, never thought about that before. My understanding of work, for example, which I'll get into tomorrow, has really opened because of something you said when I was making a presentation up at the LECNA leadership thing. You said something about work that was outside of the frame of what I was thinking, how I was thinking about work. And it's changed my whole way of thinking about what work is and what it isn't. So the community interaction is also a big part of how we do.
Let's thank again.
Wow. Were you able to wrap your head around the model for vocation that Bishop Miller presented to us all? How about those little parts where the dyads cross that Bishop Miller was talking about? Between faith and work, there was morality. Between work and economics, governance, the rule book. And between faith and economics, the social ethics of it all. And that last part really got hold for me because it actually, Bishop Miller helped us walk through the whole process. So when we create value in our community, like when we create the value of our faith here at church and start to integrate it together as a group in community and actually live it out as Bishop Miller was saying, be intentional about it, it starts to work on us. The Spirit starts to work on us in such a way that it becomes a part of our morals, our internal compass. And in my opinion, if we have enough people doing that and enough communities of people doing that, well, then it goes down to the next dyad that talks about governance, not government, the rule book, as he was talking about. Then the rules for order in our society begin to change, and we can start to begin to see some real things happening in our world. Finally, I want to leave you with this concept that Bishop Miller's talking about, seeing the congregation not just as a community, but as an economy. And this has a special place in my heart as the mission developer of Emmanuel Community Park, because that's exactly what we're trying to do. We're trying to get our people and the people out in the Golden Gate Estates area to look at our congregation and to look at our park as an economy, a place that has value, where you can learn the values of your faith and how to integrate them into your work, and then how to take that together as a group to really develop systems of change that can have a lasting impact for us all. But again, as Bishop Miller said, an integrated life requires us to be intentional. So we need your help to make this possible. Let's have this conversation. Let's continue talking about congregations as economies, working together, integrating our faith in our work and our economics, and being intentional, walking with, praying with the Spirit every step of the way as God continues to guide us towards God's truth.
I just think that was a great job, Will. I mean, I really love the model that Wayne Miller has been working on. I love your excitement around those concepts and bringing that conversation to Emmanuel and to the park. And so I think we got to close with maybe the most important question. I mean, what's your hope for this series? Probably more importantly, what's your hope for the whole conversation around faith and work, both here at Emmanuel and out at the park?
Well, as I was saying personally, Pastor Rick, this connection between faith and work is what's driving me, because you can implement spiritual disciplines in your life and see tangible results right away. And so I'm trying to take that and blow it up, in a sense, on a larger scale at the park, where the park itself is the actual teaching tool that we use to connect faith and work together. So I try to lift up that example every week, especially in our worship on Sunday. Just like this picture here from the past Sunday, where we said a blessing over Noah Kimball, who is a native son to Emmanuel here, grew up in the church, and he will be moving. Actually, they're probably on their way now out to Texas, where he's taken a position up with J.P. Morgan. And so we did a blessing over him. We reminded him that his faith and his work are connected together. And we challenged him to accept that connection and to promote it and to live it out. Because we want people to not just talk about Jesus, we want them to live in the way of Jesus.
So, well, I just love this picture for many reasons, but I think there's one thing missing in the picture. There's just one thing missing, and that's your hat. Okay, we got to get you a hat out there, because when you're working in the sun, you need that sort of protection. We want to invite you all to participate in this wonderful educational series. Each new episode is on Monday, right? And it's there for all week, and you can watch it at your convenience or watch it on Monday when it comes out. And I think if you don't want to miss one, there's one thing you can do that's so important for us, but it'll also serve you well, and that is?
Subscribe to our YouTube channel. We've actually got two channels, one for Emmanuel Academies with all of our educational offerings, and then we've also got our Emmanuel Lutheran Church page as well. So on each of those, on any video that you watch, there's a little logo in the bottom right. You can click on that logo and then click subscribe, and you won't miss a video.
So join us every week, but especially Mondays. Watch the e-blasts because they come out every Monday. Click on that little square and then up pops Work Matters with Pastor Will. I hope that you'll join us for that series and for all our educational offerings here at Emmanuel. Blessings on that conversation. And again, continued blessings out there at Emmanuel Park. Please go out. Every once in a while, go out there and visit if you can. It's just a great, great experience. And thanks for keeping us in your prayers, keeping the park and Pastor Will and Deacon D in your prayers, because we are also praying for you. Bye-bye now.